Hello and welcome back to the Claret Blue podcast, sponsored by NordVPN. If you want to get the best discount code available, there is a link in the description down below. I'm your host for this one, Dan Rolinson, joined by Jhon Townley. It's the 1st of July, John, which I am now contractually obliged to wear Adidas only. Kidding, of course. This podcast is not sponsored by Adidas. Or is that Under Armour on your t-shirt? I think I've glimpsed it before. It is Under Armour, yeah. Other sports brands are available, of course. John, how are you, mate? Everything okay?
Yeah. I'm doing well, thanks, Dan. Start of July is, although it's not literally the start of Villa's pre-season, that's how it feels. It's on us now. I feel like June is always quite a barren month. For Villa, it wasn't, to be fair. But start of July, start of the new season it's basically here now. So I'm excited.
I mean, the first pre-season game is just over 2 weeks away. Very exciting.
That's weird, that, isn't it?
Our yearly trip to Warsaw, of course, kicking off pre-season, 17th of July. I think it's Wednesday evening. This is obviously Monday afternoon as this video comes out. So, yeah, just over 2 weeks. So, the first time we'll see Emery's Aston Villa back in action, which is a very nice feeling after having seen crappy Southgate ball for the last 10 days or so, which is boring the life out of me. There are some questions about the Euros, actually, which I don't want to commit too much time to, but we will do them. This is our Q&A episode, of course, where we'll go through all our Aston Villa questions that we've been asked. It's the first time we've done a Q&A since the Hockey Live show, and the first one we've done on StreamYard for well over a month now. So loads to get into, John, so we'll jump straight into it. The first one comes from YouTube from Swedish villain Ulla, who came on the fan phoning show that we did, I don't know, whenever that was, ages ago. Yeah. It was actually off of our episode that we did about the squad depth, where we had the overhead camera of the little whiteboard card, which people really enjoyed. People actually really enjoyed all the episodes we did last week, so thank you for that. His question was something that I wanted to bring up at the time, but I forgot, so we'll do it now. He says, regarding the left side and the amount of players that are there, is there an argument for having Jacob Ramsey play in Douglas Luiz's role? Now, I don't mean this, or I don't think Ula means this in specifically that Jacob Ramsey plays in a double pivot next to Boubacar Kamara in like a best 11. Is there some kind of similarities potentially with, obviously we always say about Jacob Ramsey, Jack Grealish kind of moving with the ball, progressing the ball forward. Is there a kind of similar role for JJ possibly that Grealish had in the Championship as like a third midfielder, that kind of left-sided number 8?
For me, no. Sorry, that should...
Damn it, shut down that question straight away.
Yeah. I want JJ to be given freedom in basically the final third, or progress the ball into the final third. And I know Luiz did do that at times in his role that he played last season, but I think we need something else there. I think that's your Tielemans or your Barkley role, or insert new midfielder, as we said in our video. For me, Ramsey is a player who needs to be playing further forward, can link and occupy space, between the lines. I think that's his role. It is that Grealish role that we saw under Dean Smith, but obviously in a very different capacity because we have more of the ball now and we're dominating it more so. So, a Morgan Rogers role as we saw last season. That was what Ramsey was doing the season before. That's what I expect Ramsey to be doing next season as well. Whether Rogers then plays as that second striker that we saw McGinn play, kind of overlapping into what we did on the video the other day now. But the main point is that Villa have lots of very strong options and lots of versatile players as well. But for me, I don't think Ramsey would be used as a player who could receive the ball kind of on the half turn, closer to goal than where he is now. I think that would be kind of wasting his talent and possibly wasting someone else's as well. Could he do it? Possibly so. But I'd prefer someone to be more, kind of fine-tuned in that specific role. I think it's a very important role to play, especially in the way that we build up. One mistake and we'll probably be punished for it. And that's why Luiz was such a high-level player, because I can remember like maybe 2 mistakes that he made in about 20 months under Unai Emery, one of which was against Brighton. And even then, that's probably something that Martinez could be kind of blamed for, in that Brighton match that we eventually went and won. And that was only the second match anyway under Emery. So Luiz was such a highly technical player and a highly intelligent player as well. He obviously learned that as he went on with Villa. I remember that mistake that he made against Bournemouth in the first home game that we had with him in the team. But since then, especially in Emery, he's nearly been faultless, playing a role that is really difficult. And we see as well how many times Kamara gets caught out. I can remember probably 5 or 6, maybe 7 times that he's been caught out. Like the goal for the goal that Legia Warsaw scored, Mucci at Villa Park. Kamara has that in him to maybe make a little lapse of concentration because he's so relaxed, so kind of chilled out when he's on the ball. So yeah, I think a new player potentially, or Barkley or Tielemans, will be doing that role if that role exists next season. I don't think that's something that Ramsey would do.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Let's move on to another question then from Andrew, who says, are you really sure Conor Gallagher will sign? I just cannot see it happening at all. Now, kind of away from that, really, I don't want to say either way whether yes he will or no he won't. So we don't know for sure. Obviously, things in football change very quickly. I think the emphasis of this, again, this comes from the video we did on YouTube last about the squad depth. We kind of had a card for Gallagher. In some ways, that was better than just saying new midfielder here, ex-midfielder here. It's easy to just give that role, that position a name. We went with Gallagher because he was the one that's been linked previously. Do we think that will happen? I don't know. Who knows? It's a player that Emery likes. It's something that we know. We know that Chelsea can look at that as a favourable sale because he's an academy product from a financial perspective, but that's a player that they may possibly want to keep. They've had a change of manager. He was their captain last season. So this isn't a player on the fringes that they're kind of desperate to get rid of. There's so many variables in a specific transfer that it's difficult to say either way that yes, this will happen or no, it won't. But I think for the purposes of that video, it's easier to just go Gallagher rather than every time maybe new midfielder here, ex-midfielder here.
Yeah, exactly that. Emery is obviously a huge fan of Gallagher, and we know that Gallagher is one of Villa's priority targets, and we also know that it's a deal that Villa couldn't do last month or last month, June, because Gallagher didn't want to commit himself to anything. He wanted to focus fully on the Euros, which is fair enough, and I think that's something that says a lot about him himself, because there was a lot of talk about him leaving Chelsea last year and that Chelsea were willing to move on from him. Yet he was the captain, yet he was playing every game and playing very well, probably their second best player last season apart from Cole Palmer. So it speaks a lot about his attitude, that he wants to concentrate on one thing here and now, even though there's a clear distraction in his head, or there should be, that he will probably be leaving the club that he wants to succeed at and that he has called home for so many years. And again, like lots of low moves as well that he's had. He's willing to kind of push the boat out and do different things and do everything that's best for his career. And everything up until now has been focused on Chelsea. He's now probably going to have to make a change. At least that's how Chelsea see it. £50 million for homegrown talent is huge money because of what it does for your balance sheet, PSR. We live in a world of PSR, unfortunately, and that's how it is. So yeah, Villa obviously want Gallagher. Is that a deal that they'll pursue? I think they probably will, especially when England get knocked out of the Euros. Will discussions accelerate, etc.? Probably so. Tottenham as well obviously like him too. So Villa will have competition for him. If not, I'd expect them to go for someone else because there's clearly money there to do a deal for another midfielder. What I would say is that Villa have, I've said this previously, but Villa have planned for Douglas Luiz's exit for like 18 months. Tielemans was the first signing towards that. Barkley coming in for £5 million. Villa have been ahead of the game. As we said previously, Dan, if Luiz went for 50 million or £42 million, and Villa were left with no one, and all of a sudden they were scrambling around and they got Gallagher, let's say, well, then they'd have one player in Gallagher plus minus £8 million, if you think of it like that. But instead, right now, as we see it, Villa have Barkley and Tielemans plus £38 million. So the position they're in is really good anyway, but I'd expect them to go after another midfielder. Whoever it is, they'll be in a strong position in that department of the pitch, as we went through in the previous video. So am I sure Gallagher's going to sign for Villa? Obviously not, because it's not advanced, at least of now. So yeah, they'll go after a good midfielder, and said previously, the squad, how it will shape up next season, will be in a strong place.
Yeah, this kind of weird PSR deadline thing that passed on the 30th of June was a very strange thing to wake up to on Twitter this morning, that Elliot Anderson and Flacademos, is that, I think, the Forest goalkeeper, swapping with Newcastle for very big fees. Whether anyone is questioning those inflated fees, who knows? Chelsea selling Amari Hutchinson to Ipswich. There was another player as well that I've forgotten about, Minter to Brighton from Newcastle. All these things, it felt like a transfer deadline day yesterday to see those moves happening all at basically the same kind of time. Yeah. The question that we had that I've not written down in front of me, so forgive me for who that was from. They were saying, why were the Barrenechea and Ilian Jr. deals kind of waited until the 1st of July to be announced? Why were they not announced previously? That Douglas Luiz was yesterday, whereas those two are today. Is that a literal thing that's June versus July and 24 accounts versus 25? Or is it just a social media thing or whatever, that it was better to do that yesterday and better to do this today? Or do you not know?
I don't know for certain if Villa have put this on their books for next season. I don't know, and I'm not sure, just because Sunday doesn't count as a working day for PSR as such. So this could have been completed in the June books and just announced the day after. The Luiz deal could have been the same thing. It just depends when you want to announce the deal. But I don't know for certain if Villa have put this as a purchase for next year's accounts. I don't know that, so I'm not going to guess at it. But I think either way, as we reported previously, the Luiz deal was what put Villa in the clear regarding PSR. I don't know if Juventus wanted it to be a thing. I don't know how their books work over in Italy, whether they wanted, or it counts as 22 million euros for them now or for next year. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but Villa in the clear. It's all good. Newcastle, I think they were facing a 10-point deduction if they didn't raise their money, which is a really strange situation because they were really late selling their players, and there was no real talk of Elliot Anderson leaving, especially for Forest up until a couple of days ago. Same as Minter to go to Brighton. I know Gordon was offered up to Liverpool, but we're in a really tricky situation. It's strange how that one played out because their financial director, I think, did a video to their fans on Twitter or on social media a few months ago saying, yeah, there could be a big sale, kind of just prepare for it, which I think was probably the right thing to do. But then they left it so late to make those sales, and you kind of wonder what was going on there, whereas Villa had planned for Luiz for a very long time, kind of got the ducks in order, if that's the right phrase. And now, it's... I feel like everyone's over Luiz, to be honest, because it's been so drawn out, and I think everyone could understand it. Yes, PSR is horrible, but we know why we've sold Luiz, whereas the Newcastle situation was kind of a mad sale in the final days of the window. And yeah, they've raised a lot of money, but kind of very scattergun and very risky in the end for them. I'm happy with the deal. I think it's okay. Villa can now move on and do their business. Obviously, they've got to be mindful of PSR next year as well, because this thing isn't going away. But
everyone does, though.
They're in a good place, and we've seen how badly other clubs have suffered from it too. So this isn't a situation where it's only Villa, and it's only Villa that are in a mess. Yeah. And I know there's new rules that are going to be coming in to the Premier League from 25-26, I think. I think PSR is going to stay for now, but this can't continue. Do you know what I mean? If Villa have to suffer for a couple of years or whatever it may be, but we have the owners that we have, but we have the infrastructure that we have and the ambitions and the manager. Okay, it's not ideal.
It's a matter of time, isn't it, until the leash is let loose for finally go and do what you want to a certain extent.
You hope so. And the big six, as Jim Ratcliffe said, apparently they need to be given.
Interview was a joke, by the way. I'm so glad you called
the red carpet. Yeah,
how dare everyone else try to encroach on our Premier League? It's so outdated that you call it the Premiership as well, which hurt me in a way that it shouldn't do. But it's kind of like an idea.
The Chelsea season ticket holder, now Man United owner and lifelong fan, of course.
Yeah, just like, we got to make sure that the big six clubs get a bigger say than the others. How dare you? It's an absolute joke. He said something at one point like, the big six or the big seven. I was thinking, you finished 8th, let's not forget. Like, in the current season, you weren't even in the big six or the big seven. Anyway, less of that. Another question here from Ricardo. This kind of ends, I think, our kind of midfield chat for this section. He says, what is the plan for the Kamara role? Quite like now, by the way, that we refer to positions rather than like number 6 or number 10. It's like the Kamara role, the Rodgers role. Will it be the new Juventus lad, or are we expecting an incoming? It feels like it might be 2025 before Kamara is properly back and up to speed, which is something we've kind of alluded to or guessed towards. Obviously, recovery times vary per player, but you'd think kind of October, November is when Kamara might be back in full training, and then might need a month to get back up to speed or whatever it is. Yeah. So it could be Christmas time, start of next year, 2025, before we see Kamara starting every single game ready to go. If we are to sign another midfielder, do you think it will be in a more defensive-minded player, or will it be a Gallagher type?
I'd be surprised if we went after another holding midfielder now, because, again, I keep referring to what we spoke about on the video the other day of the squad is full up. If someone comes in, someone needs to go out, apart from maybe one player, and even then you've got a bit of an issue with the Champions League stuff. So take as we slotted in, the Gallagher or new midfielder. If that player comes in, that is kind of the max we could do then. If a striker comes in, Duran goes. If a right back comes in, Cash goes. If a new holding midfielder comes in, then you can't do Gallagher. Or, I mean, you can, but then you'd not be having a Buendia or a left back in your Champions League squad. It would get messy, I think. So I'd be surprised if you bring in another holding midfielder. And I think especially because Kamara at the moment isn't fit, but he will be in a few months. So I'm kind of like, well, would we bring in or spend money on another holding midfielder to then... To me, that doesn't make sense. I mean, yes, I don't know how many games Kamara is going to miss. I can't work out in my own head. But I just don't think the cost weighs up the kind of need. When you've got Enzo in there, McGinn, Tielemans, I know it's not ideal, but they can also play as a 2 if you need it. If this is what Emery wants to do with tactics, by the way, we don't know exactly how it'll work, but I'd expect Enzo to get an opportunity. He will need a bit of time to adapt to the Premier League, as we've previously said, but he's actually a good player already. He's 23 years old. It's not like he's 18 or 19 and he's not physically ready. There's something there for a player to come in. I know he played for a team that got relegated, but he was clearly one of their best players at Frosinone. Juve didn't want to let go of him, but felt they had to because the deal with Luiz would have just collapsed otherwise. So, yeah, I think Enzo will have a chance. And if not, then you've got experienced players around him. Barkley played in not that role and he wouldn't fit that purpose. But again, a player that can add depth if you drop McGinn back a bit more. I think we've got enough options to cope with it until Kamara can come back. And as you say, Dan, even if he's not fully ready to go, I'd be surprised if he went after another holding midfielder, because I think there's something else that we probably want to do if you want to kind of use that one other player that we bring in without selling anyone, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Let's move on to a different area of the pitch then. Captain K asks about centre-halves. With Longo going back to his parent club, I seriously feel a centre-half is needed. Uncertainty at how Tyrone Mings will be post-injury and unsure if Carlos is good enough to suit the way Unai Emery wants to play. We have no real promising centre-backs coming through the academy who are ready to step into the first-team squad. Do you agree with Captain K that it does feel a little bit like we had another question that was not included in this because it felt too if, buts and maybes, but they were asking about could Villa play a back 3. It's like we got Powell at the moment, Carlos and Konsa would be your centre-halves, Maatsen and Cash as your wing-backs, for example. Beyond that, you've got Tyrone Mings coming back from injury as your backup, Callum Chambers at the moment. So I don't think Villa have the depth at centre-half to play 3 out-and-out centre-backs like that. So I don't think we'll see that. I don't think our transfer business has indicated that we're going to make a move to 3 at the back.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we didn't sign another centre-back. But again, I think that would be because Carlos would leave. Villa will listen to offers for Carlos. He's 31 now. He joined 2 years ago under Gerrard. Yeah, he's a big earner as well. So I think it would suit Villa if he left. No, that's not like a criticism of him as a player. He got man of the match twice against Arsenal last season, and I think there's definitely something there. And I'd like to keep him in the squad, but squad rules / financially, I think it makes sense for him to go and for Villa to kind of bring someone else in. But you're right, that doesn't add depth necessarily. Mings is the big one here. We don't know exactly when he's going to return and when he's going to be fully fit. That's the frustration, because for me, if you've got Konsa plus another centre-back, Carlos or new defender, and then you've got Torres and Mings, a fully fit Mings, I think that's actually brilliant depth and quality there. It's really strong, and obviously Konsa can play right back and then come into playing the back 3, etc. We all know that. But Mings is the key one here, because if Pau Torres gets an injury, which he did last season, he was out for 2 months, you got a real problem there, because then we only have 2 centre-backs, one of which we don't know who that's going to be next season. And will they be fully fit? There's, things happen in a season, all of a sudden you don't have any other centre-backs. So that is a key issue. We need 4 centre-backs. At the moment, we have 2 plus 1 that we think is going to be, or will be probably a different centre-back to Carlos, but maybe is Carlos, I don't know. And then Mings, who at the moment is injured. So that is an issue. Obviously, we've been linked to other players before, like Hermoso, and I wouldn't be surprised if we are looking in that area. But again, I allude to the squad depth. You've really, at this point, got to bring one in and then take one out, and Mings won't be coming out, I don't think. So yeah, it's kind of let's wait to see where Tyrone is, and not that he needs to be rushed at all, but you'd hope that he can make an impact sooner rather than later, I suppose, once the season starts, is what I'd say. It is a big question mark at the moment. That is the one area for me where we are lacking options and depth, and there are question marks again, up front, you've got Watkins and, is Duran going to go? But if he goes, someone else will come in. Same for the right-back situation. Same for the midfield. I think we're okay everywhere apart from the centre-back department, because there are question marks over different things. Who's going to be there? Where is Mings at with his fitness? So I do agree that's the situation that kind of worries me the most.
Skeester also asked, our defence last season wasn't consistent. Injuries played its part in that. Going into next season, who do you see playing, brackets, in the league only, and who would you look to move on? So he's got Stay, Powell, Esri, Matson, Cash and Dean. Unsure, Mings, Moreno and Carlos. Sell, Chambers. We need a right back and a centre back.
Yeah, I'd sell Moreno, Carlos and Chambers. That sounds a bit cutthroat, but I think there's different things going on there. Yeah, and we have 2 left backs now. Moreno was fantastic for that period 2 seasons ago, but he has interest from Spain. I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to go back. That one I think could work out for everybody. Carlos, it's a difficult situation because obviously these players were part of a team that go in the Champions League, and then if you tell them, okay, we're going to sell you now, they'd be a bit like, oh no, I want to stay. I've helped you guys. You know, you can't just force players out of the club, sort of thing. Yeah. And Villa have been in a worse situation with players kind of kicking up. Do you know what I mean? Carlos, it sounds like I want him to leave, or we want him to leave because it's an issue. It's not an issue. It's just I think Villa can see an opportunity to lower wages and maybe increase quality as well in that department there. So yeah, those 2. Chambers is obviously going to be. He'll be told he can leave. He's been told he could leave for the last 2 windows, and if something suits him, then he'll go. Luca Dean, obviously very well settled at the club, had a great season last season, but also was of interest to different teams last year, and even towards the end of the window, Emery still wasn't sure if he was going to be staying or going, but he was kind of more confident that he'd be staying. So whether the situation comes up again in this summer, let's wait and see. Elsewhere, you've got like Lino Sousa, I think, who will probably go out on loan again. Kane Kessler-Hayden, obviously a situation there where he hasn't played for Villa consistently or regularly, even though he's been called back. So yeah, Villa have lots of fullbacks. Obviously you got Costa as well, as we went through the other day. Illing Jr. could possibly be playing at left back. I don't know. There's a lot to go there and a lot to kind of sort, but as long as they have depth, I'm happy.
I'm going to put these 2 questions together from Sean and then Henry. Sean, first of all, says, after the 3 incomings are through the door, I can foresee 6 or 7 outs and at least 4 more to come in. Am I overestimating the summer that we still have ahead of us? And Henry says, are you worried about too much disruption to the squad with what looks like quite a few incomings? There's always that worry, isn't there, that too many signings can kind of disrupt what happened last season, that there was a good kind of close-knit feel there to the squad that got us up into the top 4. To change too much of that might kind of put a few noses out of joint. But sometimes business needs to be done rather than that you want to do it. Or you can't sell Douglas Luiz for financial reasons and then go, oh, well, we'll just kind of get by without it. Like, you have to do a certain level of business to kind of keep up. It's a fine balance to get right, and you'd, again, kind of just do that thing we always do and hold our hands up and go, trust in Emery. If he thinks this is fine, then, yeah, it is fine.
I'm not worried about that, to be honest with you. This is professional football. I think usually my concern would be, well, can the new players who come in, will they be able to settle at Villa? That's kind of I think that's the alternative question. And my answer to that would be yes, because this is a club that has all the infrastructure it needs, in the football department, and a group of experienced pros. Your John McGinn's, Emi Martinez, Ollie Watkins is that now. Other players, even someone like a Ross Barkley, who will be coming back to the club, he'll settle in straight away. Obviously, he's been here before. He knows some of the players, like McGinn. Players come, players go. That's the same for every summer. And I think that players at Villa will also be aware that Villa aren't changing or making wholesale changes for the sake of it. There is, again, a PSR background. Everyone's aware of that. I think the players who were there will feel I don't know how to quite word this, but kind of glad they're not the one that is being sacrificed or being moved on. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, Champions League campaign coming up. They have Emery as head coach. They won't be allowed to switch off or to sulk because their teammate isn't there anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's a kind of cutthroat in that sense. And this is Aston Villa. I'm sure they'll be fine with it. And what I would say as well, when Monchi was director at other clubs, whenever I'd look at how many transfers he made, i.e. at Roma or Sevilla, there was like probably 3 times more than what I had expected, if that makes sense. So I think it's maybe like a European thing as well. There's always a lot of change at clubs. And I think for Villa, a team that has tried to kind of do this quite sustainably, in terms of, we obviously had the massive overhaul when we first got promoted, but then after that we kind of brought in like 5 and let go of 5, that kind of thing. Even last summer, you had 5 players come in, 2 of which came in because of injuries to Mings and Buendia. There wasn't a big kind of wholesale change there, but now different reasons, financially being one, we have had to make that change. But I'm okay with it. Again, the players that we have, they would have experienced this at other clubs, players leaving, players coming in. I'm fine with it.
I think you'll see more of that kind of attitude in English football as well, whilst these kind of rules are in place about finances to kind of move pawns around basically on chessboard. Daniel says, who takes our penalties now and scores directly from corners?
To be fair, I forgot Luiz scored from corners. Penalties is an issue, to be fair.
Tielemans, if he's starting most weeks, I imagine could dispatch a penalty with comfort.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the players that we could add to the 11. Don't think any
Conor Gallagher type penalties.
Yeah, I'd probably say Tielemans as well. Like if Villa were told, you have to score a penalty, else Champions League football is taken away, I'd give it to Tielemans, because I think he'd be the most kind of ice cold in that situation. So, yeah, Tielemans is my answer.
Imagine a scenario that the football gods take Champions League football away because Ollie Watkins missed a penalty. Dom says, I think he'll start using Morgan Rogers as a second striker, which is what he wanted to do. When he says he means Unai Emery. What Unai Emery wanted to do when Unai Emery brought him in, but had to play him from the left as no one else was fit at the time.
Yeah, mentioned that. I don't know, 20 minutes ago. Sounds like the question isn't live. Obviously, that was a question that Dom asked before that. Yeah, definitely an option. Again, versatility is the key thing, and we've seen that with the signings of Barkley, Mats, and it's the key theme, right? So Rodgers can play on the left as a second striker. Ramsey can do different things. I think that's the crucial thing. McGinn can play further up or deeper. I think everyone has their preferred position, somewhere that they can be most effective from. But yeah, the key thing is that when Villa have injuries, I think we said this in a previous video, Dan, I don't think we'll be scrambling around thinking, oh God, who's going to play in that position and what's he going to do? I think we'll be in kind of the position where, Tielemans did that last season and he did it fine. He can do it again. Or McGinn, do you know what I mean? I don't think we'll be thinking kind of too negatively about injuries next season, as long as there's not too many. Yeah. But one injury here and there, in different positions, we should be able to cope fine, even if it means Rodgers playing second striker or McGinn playing deeper. We have options. So
I think there's so much more fluidity across that kind of forward 6 positions, if you like, that we didn't almost understand that was there before. That 2 years ago, if you said like John McGinn's going to play off the right, you'd be thinking, oh no, he doesn't. That's not his role. Last year, Youri Tielemans playing left wing or off the left. That's not his position. He doesn't do that. Morgan Rogers could play behind Ollie Watkins. Buendia could play there. Diaby could play there. Bailey can play on both sides if we have to.
That's it.
It feels like most players, not saying they're going to play 9 out of 10 in every role, but if you had to, most players could pretty much play anywhere across those forward positions.
Precisely that, yeah. From the left, from the right, playing behind Watkins, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 players who could do those roles. Yeah, which is a remarkable amount of depth, possibly 8 with a new signing, And
a couple of them can drop back into a double pivot if you absolutely had to. Like McGinn can play deep, Tielemans can play deeper.
Yeah, Barkley as well. Yeah. Nearly 10 players can play, fully fit Villa, can play across those roles, which is an incredible amount of depth. So that's why I think injury-wise, hopefully we'll be okay in at least that part of the pitch next season. Defensively, again, question marks. But yeah, we have some like really good depth. I always say a few years ago when you look at teams like Tottenham or even like an Everton when they were in Europe, and you look at their bench and you think like, God, they must be like frustrated that they can't get in the starting 11, and surely they'll want to move on or whatever. But actually, that's what you need. You need players who should be able to start every game, also on your bench, because we should be playing about 50 games next season again, probably more. So you need that depth, but Villa certainly have it, and a lot of it, and a lot of quality as well. That's the key point. They're not just names. Buendia was our record signing for a period of time, and he was our best player in pre-season last summer. Hopefully he'll be able to continue that after his injury. Ramsey, Rodgers, it's loads of quality, different profiles as well, which is really exciting.
Just talking there about the number of games has offset a stupid question in my head. Saw something the other day about McGinn playing, I think it was something like 60 over the course of 12 months for Villa and Scotland. Minimum amount of games we can play off the top of my head, if I thought of everything, is 48. 38 in the Premier League, 8 in the Champions League, and then 1 in both domestic cups if we get knocked out in the first round, which fingers crossed that does not happen, obviously. I don't know why I'm going with this. If you had to guess the amount of games that Villa play next season, how many do you think we play?
So it's 48 plus a knockout Champions League game. So 50, maybe plus 2 others, around 16, 52, probably like 3 to 4 domestic cup games, because I don't think we'll take them particularly seriously. I'd say 55 is a rough get, 55 to 60 games, I think. Yeah. And that would probably mark a good season as well.
I don't know what it was this year, by the way. Obviously, we went out of the cup.
That doesn't say anything to do with our league position, the amount of games we play, but
true, yes. Yeah, imagine that. Oh, we played 60 games, so it must have gone well. We went well in the cups, but we got relegated.
we just got to 2 semi-finals, lost them both, Champions League.
Okay, all right, stupid
question.
If you
offer me 60 games right now, I'd probably... Do you know what I mean? I don't know.
What conversation is this? Rather than like discussing points totals or like semi-final or quarter-final, if you just offered me 60 games, I'd say yes.
It's unknown, isn't it? Because you kind of thinking, oh, am I going to trade that? That could mean like 2 quarterfinals in the domestic cups, but a rubbish Champions League campaign, or it could mean like semi-final of Champions League. Could it potentially? So
possibly. Okay, yeah, good. So 60 games next year is the aim, everybody. That's what we're going for. Okay, right. Next, from Alex. He says, how much can we roughly spend from tomorrow? This was yesterday, so he means today. Could 100 million on Nico Williams, if we spread that out over a 5-year deal, be feasible, or am I being silly? Would Nico Williams cost 100 anyway?
Nico Williams to Villa, who says no? He already has. Yeah. Firstly, he's got a buyout, I think, of like 50, but I think he's really happy at Bilbao. It's such a unique club, and obviously Villa tried to sign him 2 Januaries ago. You can tell why Emery was so keen to sign him, and yeah, obviously didn't want to join us. Wanted to stay at Bilbao, and I'd have thought his next move would be a Barcelona or Real Madrid, to be honest. Obviously I'd want him at Villa, but I think that ship sailed anyway. But what I don't want to see is him end up at Chelsea or. Do you know what I mean? One of them kind of clubs who have aspirations, but they don't really know what they're doing. I'd rather him go to a top club and just play with his career.
Stay where he was, and
I like it. I feel like he's a player that everyone just likes because first he's a good player, but also he clearly has the right kind of guidance. Obviously, his brother plays with him at Bilbao. There's a nice story there. So I like Nico Williams more than just a player, but Villa, I don't think that's the thing anymore. And any player could we sign any player for £100 million? I don't think that's kind of in our thinking at the moment, to be fair.
The final question in kind of the football section, if you like, before we get into some of the hypothetical, sillier stuff, from Baz simply says, I would be curious to know you and how the fans feel about Duran's behaviour. I suppose this alludes to social media behaviour more so than anything, kind of tweeting out cryptic emojis and stuff, and I've seen people take that very seriously as like guys clowning around, get rid of him, or he's taking the mick out of our club, blah blah blah, and we don't even know that posting 5 laughing emojis is anything to do with anything Villa related anyway. I've kind of said my piece on Duran before in previous podcasts that we've done, that I kind of get the impression that, I think like the analogy I used before was like that, like a teacher finally getting fed up with one of the students like sitting around at the back of the room, and they're kind of glad that when the year's over that kid's going to move up to a different group and you don't have to look after them anymore. Kind of get that vibe from Emery. He's like, done my time now with this guy. Like, I've tried to help him and he's kind of can't be helped really. So if I can get good money for him and kind of wash my hands of the whole situation, I can reinvest that money in somebody who I can actually nurture and make better. this guy feels a little bit like a lost cause, is the impression that I get.
Firstly, you're right to point out that those posts that he made on Twitter, we don't know what they were about. He might, I think he did a series of eyes emoji as well, and then deleted it straight away. But that could be him kind of giving him benefit of the doubt. It could be something unrelated to Villa. And then he thinks, crap, I shouldn't have done that. Or was it him just trying to fuel something? I don't know. I think he's got to be a bit wary about it. But to say that Jhon Duran needs to be wary about something, it's kind of a pointless question to ask him or demand. You know what I mean? Him liking tweets about Chelsea, I think that's very disrespectful and something that shouldn't.
I think that's different.
That's out of order, sort of thing. Why are you doing that? Don't do that. Even if you were to support Chelsea, for example, if we were professional footballers, Dan, crazy, I know, obviously big Villa fans. If we were playing for someone else, even if, do you know what I mean? You wouldn't start liking the tweets from that. Just be professional about it, and obviously don't do it to try and fuel a transfer. I don't think his guidance is particularly great from whoever he's telling him to do things, because they would have told him not to do that. But then there's another side to Jhon Duran as well. Like the season before last, I saw him give a watch to a fan, and that's just balmy. He's a very talented player, and a player that one day could become something incredibly good, and hopefully one day thinks, I've kind of, shouldn't have done that when I was at Villa when I was 20. Even stuff like the Juan Pablo Angel thing, kind of welcoming him at Villa. Obviously, we've been very welcoming to Duran. As far as I know, there's no issues there. Yet he's kind of chosen to be disrespectful in terms of liking posts on X about Chelsea and doing other things that shouldn't happen if you're a professional footballer. That's the stuff that he needs to cut out. And again, hopefully in time he'll regret, because he's only 20 still. But yeah, for Emery, can he wait 4 years for him to become a top striker when here and now we're in the Champions League? Is it worth it? Again, PSR background, £40 million would be a good deal if Villa can do it. Obviously, it was broadly agreed with Chelsea, but it seems to have kind of dried up, that deal. I don't know if for certain. Maybe it will be revived after a few weeks or something. I'm not sure. But they obviously did background checks on him, and we're allowed to talk to him. Hasn't progressed since then. Whether it will, again, don't know. But yeah, that Jhon Duran, it's kind of fitting that the situation of him leaving Villa is all complicated and up in the air. It kind of suits him, to be honest.
We're now going to do our silly question segment. This is where we're heading now. There's 5 or 6 here. Some of them are actually about the Euro, so it's still football related, still Villa related as well. First one from Sam, who says, from the 3 promoted teams, which one is John looking forward to sampling the food of most?
Ooh, great question. I already know that. It's Leicester. For those who don't know, Leicester is like it's widely regarded as one of the best press catering services that there is around. Genuinely, I've never sampled it myself, but whenever you ask the question to more experienced journalists, it's a big question, a nice conversation to have. They'll always say, you kind of Man City, Tottenham, Chelsea, Arsenal, Leicester, and I always think Leicester, really. But apparently they do a really nice like chocolate orange cake thing, which again I haven't tried yet, but really looking forward to it if that's on the menu.
Max Stokes says, what was the one game last season Super John Townley brackets goat emoji wishes he was in the away end for?
I love that question from Mr. Stokes. I think I would say shout out to the Luton away game when we won 3-2, Luca Dean's header. Just sublime limbs from me in the press box. Chelsea away when Watkins scored relatively late on. Was it even late on? 70 minutes or so, I think. So it wasn't actually that too late.
I'll give you that.
Good limbs nonetheless. And Brentford away, I thought was also good. But my answer has to be both goals against Arsenal away.
Yeah.
That was, it's just, mate.
That was some good lineage.
For sure. I think the Emirates is always the best. I don't know for sure because I haven't been in the away end, but in terms of a visual for limbs, do you know what I mean? Like when Wesley scored, when he knocked in Grealish's cross the other year, and when Luna scored, stuff like that, it gives a nice, do you know what I mean? You can proper feel it. So yeah, I'd definitely say Arsenal. And there's that nice shot as well of kind of like, it's not a drone, but it's like the camera that's pointing down. I think, when it's on the wire, I think it was.
Yeah, spider cam, I think they call that.
For the Bailey and...
No, it's why you don't like spiders.
Nah, even when you say it, man, it just creeps me out.
No, I don't like spiders, but...
I had loads in my apartment recently as well, so not good. Anyway.
It's not spider season now, is it? That's a winter thing.
Oh, and that's what I'm scared about.
Oh, you'll be inundated with spiders in the winter.
Genuinely, anyone who knows me well knows that even like the word, I have to look around and Yeah, it's horrible.
What would you do now
Bailey,
if I said there was one like just crawling by that mug behind you?
even the word crawling, like it's horrible. Genuinely.
Sorry,
Oh,
carry on.
Bailey and Watkins goals against Arsenal have been massively distracting now. Best limbs for sure.
Okay, right. Let's move on. I'll give you a couple of minutes to compose yourself. Couple of Euros related questions. Now, it's obviously got a Villa tinge to it. Matt says, thoughts on Konsa and Watkins having quiet Euros so far? Positives, fewer minutes means less risk of injury and less transfer hype around them. Not that we'd be selling anyway. Negatives, Villa players not representing as much as we'd like to see, and it's a poor reward for their seasons last year. Kind of, but I also don't really care that much.
Yeah, I'm not fussed. Konsa will probably start.
I would like them both to get back to Bodymoor Heath and be flashed by you've probably never seen it, the Men in Black thing wipes your memory. Seen Men in Black?
No, I've seen a GIF.
Okay. So that thing, forget everything that Gareth Southgate's been saying to you for the last couple of weeks, and now you're back with Emery, who knows what he's talking about.
Watkins was never going to get many minutes. I'm neither surprised or particularly fussed about it. I think the Euro squad's always like a massive thing when it's announced, but then we all know who's going to play. We all know who isn't going to play.
Yeah.
And it's never a great surprise. So,
I mean, the Watkins thing, like obviously last night is when England played, as I'm recording this, against Slovakia, bringing on Ivan Toney at 1-0 down with 3 minutes to go. Like, firstly, what is that going to do? But also, like, the Kane and Toney is kind of like they're interchangeable. If Kane's not available, Toney could probably do the Kane role, maybe. So the fact that the change wasn't Watkins even at that point was, I know we went on to go on and win the game, so it kind of looks all right in the end, but that was the solution at 1-0 down to bring Toney on for a couple of minutes. So Watkins is never going to get much of a chance, is he?
No, and Kane's going to start every game. At that point, Toney came on and, to be fair, did well. You know, Watkins suited the game against, who did he come on? Was it Denmark? Yeah, he came on against Denmark. He suited that game because we needed runs in the channels. So, yeah, different matches suit different players. I'm not going to kind of kick up a fuss if they're not playing. I think being in the squad is their reward, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's just one of them, isn't it? Not being injured is a nice thing to say that Villa players aren't going to be affected next season because of the Euros. Not yet, touch wood. Jacob Ramsey for the under-21s last summer, great for him to be playing that, but then basically missed the whole season for Villa through an injury he picked up at that tournament. So if that's the trade-off, Watkins gets minutes for England, great, but he gets an injury that keeps him out of Villa's Champions League campaign for 3 months. Forget that, not a chance I would take that trade at all. Joe says, is it coming home?
No, because in my opinion, it can't come home in the Euros. I think that's a World Cup thing. I get a lot of stick for it from my mates, but for me, the World Cup is the only thing that I really care about with England. It might sound controversial, but the Euros for me is like a nice competition. I watch it.
It's the Euros like the Europa League, and the World Cup's like the Champions League.
No, I can't compare it to club football because, like with Villa, if we win the Europa League, that would be everything. Like, you know, at the moment anyway. But Euros, just I don't know. Like, if we win the Euros, I'd be like, okay, great. But it's not the World Cup. The world's so small these days. It probably takes as long to fly to some parts of Europe as it is to America, which is where the Copa America is. Why can't we just, do you know what I mean?
Did you just say the world's so small these days, as if like the world's smaller in the last couple of years?
I'm not like a climate change activist. I don't even know if that like is a thing. But no, it's in like travel and stuff like just everything's so much closer together and stuff. Why do we have to be like, I don't know, just for me the Euros is like, but not really.
I can't get what you're saying. I think the phrase coming home can't apply to the Euros because we've not won it before. Surely it can only come home in the sense of the World Cup can come home because it was here once before. You
haven't won football, do you know what I mean? You've just won your competition that Argentina can't even qualify for. It was kind of like my thing for the Conference League. It was like, well, if we won it, I'd be absolutely gassed, fantastic. But you have to qualify for that tournament because you're worse than the teams that are in the other one, if that makes sense. Like, you've done as well as you could do, but it's not the thing that really matters.
It is weird. I've not been that bothered about the Euros as a whole, but I think that's partly because I missed the start of it being away. But like in years previously in tournament football, like I'd watched like most of the games throughout. Whereas like I've watched England and a couple of others this tournament. I've only watched some of England. In fact, I ain't even watched all the games. Whereas before, I'd be like, 3 games a day, like football back to back, like enjoying every moment of it when I was younger. And I just got a different feel to this one that I'm just not that bothered about the whole of it. I'm not just talking England, I'm talking the competition.
Yeah, to be honest, I felt like that in the previous Euros as well, not just because fans weren't allowed or whatever. I don't know. For me, like my best memories of international football was a World Cup in like a foreign country, obviously, because it hasn't been in England, but as in like the Brazil World Cup, South Africa World Cup, it was like you could kind of see a different sort of football culture, if that makes sense. And it was like everywhere, and kind of the world in one place, and that was like a celebration and everything. Whereas the Euros for me is just a bit like it's just a big watered down version.
I honestly don't know how to answer this one, so I'm going to let you go first. Dave says, would you accept winning the Champions League this season with Villa, obviously, if it meant immediately having to replace Unai Emery as manager with Gareth Southgate, and then he stays for 5 years? Also, how would that work?
5 years.
Also, how would that work when he refuses to play Villa players? Was the end of the question, which I quite enjoyed. Champions League trophy in May 2025, but then Unai Emery sacked and Gareth Southgate is here till May 2030.
You're basically saying, would you take a Champions League win in 6 years? Otherwise, it's absolute like.
We don't know that, John. Maybe Gareth Southgate has continued success with Aston Villa.
We do know that. It's really difficult because winning the Champions League is the pinnacle.
I think that's a really difficult question. I think you have to take it.
It's really difficult because no one wants to see Unai Emery leave the club. And could we win 2 Champions Leagues? Don't know.
Well, I suppose that is the thing. If you want Unai Emery to be here, if you expect Unai Emery to be here till 2030, are you taking the gamble that we'll win it in that time anyway?
I think the trade-off is, would you accept 5 years of just the worst sort of thing in terms of Villa, or would you take 6 years of maybe winning something, but then also enjoying it? You know what I mean? But then winning the Champions League, that's it, isn't it? It is difficult though. Don't get me wrong.
I'm not going to take it. I just can't bear the thought of Unai Emery not being here. I mean, Unai Emery leaving at some point and who we replace him with and stuff is going to be a difficult conversation one day because that obviously is going to happen at some point.
It avoids that.
But being stuck with Gareth Southgate as the alternative and he has to stay there. If it was like, you've got to have him, but then maybe we can sack him a year later and try again. Like that's a little bit different. God. 5 years of Southgate, what are Villa going to achieve in that time? Like finish mid-table, maybe get into Europe if we're lucky.
I think you'd have to look at what's the worst possible situation. Would we get relegated? I don't think we would, but
it does feel
it would be good. I don't know. I think.
If you're stuck with Emery for 5 years, you're saying that, we might not win the Champions League, which is what we're being offered, but we might win 2 FA Cups in that time or win the Europa League in that time. And those kind of things being worth more than 1 Champions League in 5 years.
And would you say after 5 years, if we do succeed under Emery and then we had to bring someone else in who's actually good, we could then maybe look towards doing Champions League anyway after then? You know what I mean? Whereas I'm kind of banking the Champions League now and then crisis afterwards, sort of thing. I don't know. It's similar to
it's basically the club. What happened to the club in '82? We got relegated in '87, I think.
I mean, I was gonna compare it to Leicester, but obviously the Villa stuff's more pertinent. So but like they win a FA Cup and a league or whatever, and then they go through it. So I don't know.
I think Leicester fans would take it.
Leicester fans would, of course, because it's Leicester. I don't know. Can I just say that I like where we're going and just let's see what happens?
Yes, you can say that.
I don't want to do this section of the podcast ever again.
Well, this section of the podcast will be back next week, as always, as the Q&A is every Monday. We tend to do a Q&A episode and talk all things Aston Villa. And we've covered absolutely loads today, from the midfield debate to centre-halves, new signings, formations, and then a bunch of nice, silly stuff at the end as well. A little bit of Euros chat as well for those that enjoy that kind of stuff, but it's not particularly for either of us. So, John, thank you for your time as always. We'll be back later in the week with more podcasts on what I'm not sure, but there will be plenty of content coming as always. I am trying to do a little bit of digging into Ian Matson's career so far with speaking to a couple of fellow journalists and Ross Barker as well. So those might be out this week. They may be next week. Matt Kendrick's Villa voice notes will be returning on the audio-only platform this week as well after a little hiatus. But we'll be back with plenty of content, so stay subscribed to Claret and Blue to keep up to date with all of our latest episodes. John, thanks for your time as always. Thanks everyone for watching or listening, and we'll see you on the next one.